At exactly 2:18 p.m. on the 14th of August 2025, Nigerian lawyer, media personality, feminist activist, and gender activist made a post on X saying, and I quote, "I pray from the depth of my heart that Nigeria never happens to me or anyone I care about." Now, I'm sure that you'll be wondering what she meant by Nigeria happening to her or anyone she cares about. Unfortunately, Nigeria has happened to her. As at the 29th of September 2025, Sommie Maduagwu, also known as Chukwuma Maduagwu, has passed on. She's died due to an armed robbery attack that was meted out on her on the 29th of September at her apartment in Lagos. Now, before I get into it, let me explain first what she meant by that statement. Nigeria happens to you when you feel the effects of the dysfunctionality and systemic failures of that country when you are in need. And indeed, by the time we are done with this true crime story, you realize that what Sommie Maduagwu prayed against is exactly what she faced. And I'll break it down after I give the details of the actual incident. Now, Chukwuma Maduagwu, was a news anchor with the Arise TV station. And she was one of the best to actually do it. As at the time of her passing, she was just 29 years old. But she was actually born and raised in the United Kingdom. So if you look at the trend of how people are actually seeking to leave Africa and immigrate to the UK, the US, Canada, and other places, then Chukwuma Maduagwu actually was already blessed in that regard and didn't even have to bother coming back to her native country of Nigeria. But she did. She did this because she had this burning desire in her heart to come to her native country and contribute her quota to build the country. But, well, like I said, and she prayed against, Nigeria has happened to her. But what exactly happened? So, reports indicate that on the 29th of September 2025, this shocking incident would occur, which has actually shook the roots of the country and the continent as a whole, where allegedly about 15 or more armed men would show up at the Katampe Abuja estate. And this is an estate that is at the center of Abuja. Initially I said Lagos, forgive me. It's at the center of Abuja with all the glamour and everything and the visibility. You wouldn't expect to see that robbers numbering over 15 or more would be able to just patrol to the place and start robbing the residents. But that is exactly what happened, because by the time anyone could say Jack, these robbers had gotten to this apartment complex, and it's not like it's just 2 or 3 apartments. It's over 12 to 15 or more apartments in that complex. And they had a security person there. These robbers apparently got there and they unalived this security person and started attacking the residents in the apartments they're in. Now, Sommie or Sommie Maduagwu was actually one of these residents, but she was on the last floor. So as this robbery was ongoing, at a point, Sommie is alleged to have jumped from the 3rd floor, the balcony of the 3rd floor where she was located. And this is where everything starts unfolding from, because that jump would commence the beginning of her end. And the story gets murky from that point. But before we get to how she passed on after that jump, let's break down why she would have jumped, or if she even jumped at all, because there are a lot of conspiracy theories in that area of the incident. Some people are indicating that she actually jumped to escape the robbers, and that she actually landed but sustained injuries and didn't pass on from jumping. She survived it, but then when she was rushed to the hospital, other things happened. Some are also saying the police who were now at the location didn't provide quick assistance to her. We'll get into all that. But the first thing is, some are saying she didn't jump and she was rather pushed, because an alleged eyewitness is apparently indicating that when they found Somi Chukwu, she was not having pants on. We don't know whether he's referring to pants in the context of trousers or pants in the context of underwear. We don't even know whether what this alleged tenant is saying is true. So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is that they are indicating that when the police got there, the robbers had actually left. And I was like, how convenient. Most often it seems the police are always almost late. Particularly in Africa, they are almost always late to engage the robbers in the act. And they come after the robbers have left. But, well, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. But the story says that when they got there, they actually saw Somi Chukwu, and residents were advocating that they convey her to the hospital because they had seen her after she had taken that jump and sustained injuries and was on the floor. But it's being alleged that the police said they don't have fuel in their vehicle to convey her. And I was like, if this is really true that they said that, what the hell? What do you mean by you don't have fuel? You actually drove the vehicle to the site. So how do you tell us when you get to the site and there's a serious injury to one of the residents to whom you should convey, you indicate you don't have fuel? I still don't understand. And that is when you begin to realize that Nigeria is happening to you. Because first of all, why should it be that people numbering over 15 are able to just march to an apartment and commit that type of mass robbery around 3 a.m.? Where were the police? Where were the security? How come citizens are exposed to that type of danger in such a country? That is Nigeria happening to you. Now, the second bit is the police coming there and allegedly saying that they don't have fuel. If that is true, that is another way Nigeria happens to you, because you expect the system to work such that if you need the services of these people who are actually being paid by the use of your tax, they would actually show up and be effective. But when they showed up, you saw what was happening. And in certain types of critical injuries, every single second counts. It could make a difference. Now, the other part of this incident also indicates that when Sommie Maduagwu was actually got into the hospital eventually in her injuries, the hospital also claimed that they were not going to admit her unless they provide her ID card. This particular bit is also being disputed by this said hospital, whose name I wouldn't mention. But if that is also true, I begin to wonder, how can these things be happening? Because which is more important, saving the life or verifying the ID card? To the point that this is an emergency. Robbers actually came. You're expecting at the time this person was trying to escape, she should actually remember that, hey, I have to pick my ID in case I get injured. The hospital will need it. It's so dumb. That is, if it's true, it's so dumb. In the sense that you could still check on this person and give the person the treatment required whilst you save that life, and then do the needful checks on a secondary level. The primary thing is the preservation of the life. You know, and in previous times, we've seen videos of Nigerian health system failures and systemic blunders being committed by some healthcare professionals and institutions in Nigeria. And if this assertion is also true, then it just adds to the list of Nigeria happening to people. Now, like I was saying, in such severe injuries, every single second counts. So, if it happens that what the police did were true, as in the delay, and what the hospital also did were true, or any of them are true. That was actually Sommie Maduagwu's precious life gradually taken away because of Nigeria happening to her. I told you, Nigeria happening to you is when the dysfunctionality and systemic failures of that country affects you when you are in need of those systems. Sommie Maduagwu, as remarkable as she was, couldn't get up and become a nurse and a doctor to herself. She couldn't become a police officer to herself. She couldn't drive herself. She was at the mercy of the systemic structures in Nigeria, and the failures of that system and its dysfunctionality made her a victim of it. My heart goes out to her family and loved ones, and you can imagine the pain. I did a bit of background check on her, and her profile is amazing. Her body of work is amazing. At just 29 years old, she's actually been called to the bar. She's a lawyer. She's a news anchor with one of the biggest TV networks in Nigeria, Arise. She's taken up several modeling and beauty pageant competitions and represented this same country and put them on the map. She's taken up several projects, like working closely with the She Takes Up Space non-profit organization, among several other things. This lady, I believe, could have gone on to do amazing things for Nigeria as a country and possibly even the African continent. But look at the systemic failures and how it has brought her to such a devastating end. You know, why should it be that there should be so much fear, that security is compromised to this extent? A human being feels that the only way to survive is to jump from the third floor of her apartment building. Because look at her, as pretty and beautiful as she is. Definitely, you could suspect that if these robbers had gotten their hands on her, they may want to get close and personal with her, which it's a very nasty thing to even anticipate. And some were saying, why did she jump? Didn't she know? And I'm like, shut your mouth, because you don't even understand what panic means. You don't understand what imminent fear of death is. Because these guys had already unalived the security man when they were gaining entry. Who is to say what they were going to do next? And some people are also saying that she didn't jump, but that she was pushed by these robbers after they had actually done something physical with her. All these things are in the mix of this incident, and I'm holding on and waiting for the autopsy to possibly tell us exactly what she went through in the last minutes of her life. A beautiful life lost to the dysfunctionality and systemic failures of Nigeria. Some people have come on social media talking about the fact that robberies have been everywhere, citing prominent people across the world who died from robberies, like Lucky Dube and all. And in as much as it seemed like they were making a valid point, I looked at the whole argument in its totality and I asked myself, what about it still justifies what has happened? They were coming from the angle that Nigeria is not dysfunctional, but there are systemic failures everywhere. But I was like, it still doesn't cancel the systemic failures in Nigeria. It's still something that has happened and is happening. So instead of comparing yourself to the West, why don't you compare yourself to the best? Like places like Denmark, where you wouldn't have these things happening. Why do you ignore the best standard and go down to the West standard and compare yourself with it and say that it's normal? I think that is a very mediocre way to look at some of these things, because it's like an exam with a pass mark of 50. If you had 40 over 100, you have failed. You don't proceed to go and compare yourself to the guy who had 25 over 100 and say you've done better. Even though technically you may have still done better, or even the same guy had maybe 40 just like you, both of you have actually failed. Compare yourself to the person who had the best grade, 99 over 100, 98 over 100, and then you see the work you actually have to do to climb. I think that it's about time we pay attention to some of these things. And it's not because she's a popular person or she's a celebrity or she's renowned or well-to-do. It's because her status has actually shot the story to a global level. And I think that it's about time the police and the security agencies and the government do something about this. The police have actually put out a response. I'll be bringing you an episode on that. They've explained some things. We'll get into all that in the next episode. But just make time, go to the comment section and type something to commiserate with the family. You can put an RIP there. Let's show some love and condolence to the family. This is a death that should have never happened. Honestly, it should have never happened. And my heart goes to her family and her loved ones. May she rest in peace. I'll catch you on the next one.